Hi, I'm Caroline Leavitt. I just ran up 3 flights of stairs, so I'm a little out of breath. But I'm the co-founder of Mighty Blaze, the book initiative that began when the pandemic did. And I'm thrilled to have you all here. I want to mention that any book you want to buy, including our special guest book, we like to partner with bookshop.org, which will guide you to an indie bookstore near you. Or if you have a favorite one, you can go there. Please pop your questions into the chat and I will ask them of Leah. Leah, you don't have to even look at them. I'll take care of it. And if you have any other questions or anything, you can also ask me. And I'm just completely thrilled to have Leah Lax here today to talk about her book, Not From Here, The Song of America. I have to tell you, it's amazing. And I have to tell you, Leah's amazing. I want to give you her official biography and then my personal one. Leah Lax was raised in a Jewish family in Dallas, Texas, close to her immigrant grandparents. So growing up, she learned both to crochet and ride a horse. This is Leah's writing, and it's wonderful. Then she joined the Hasidim, which is an Orthodox Jewish group, and spent 30 years among them trying to reclaim the roots her family had left behind. Now, on the other side of all that, and grateful for second chances, she has published award-winning fiction, nonfiction, and prose poetry. Her work for stage includes major productions with both the Houston Grand Opera and the Houston Symphony. Now comes the personal bio. Okay, so I became friends with Leah Lax because of a book of mine. I wanted to write about my mother's stories. My mother had grown up in an Orthodox Jewish family. Her father was a rabbi. And when I was writing my novel, Days of Wonder, I wanted to get every detail right of what it was like for a young girl to grow up in a Hasidic family. So I was trying to think of who to talk to, and I remember this amazing novel I had read and loved, which was Uncovered by Leah Lax. And it was about her experiences joining and then leaving the Hasidim. So I shyly wrote her, and she wrote me back with a letter that was so full of warmth and questions and an offer to read my pages, both as a writer and as someone who could act as a sensitivity reader. And let me just tell you, her edits were brilliant. Our conversations were thrilling. And the best thing of all is we became really good friends. I absolutely adore her. She's funny, smart, and, absolutely brilliant. I went to her New York City performance of the operetta, which was made from Uncovered, and I sat in the audience in tears and stunned. And I was lucky enough to be an early reader of Not From Here, which moved me to tears. So here are some of the raves for the book, and then I promise I'll let you talk, Leah. From Gloria Steinem. Leah Lax understands that everybody has a story and a secret. To experience this ourselves, we have only to read her utterly irresistible Not From Here. That's Gloria Steinem, people. From Gina Frangello, author of Blow Your House Down, a story of family, feminism, and treason. When I lived in the Hasidic world, mine were the only people fully real to me, Lax writes in the powerful compilation that is Not From Here, The Song of America. Exiled from the only world she knew once she began to live openly as a lesbian, Lax embarks on a quest to understand the true plurality of our national identity. This chorus of voices, meant from the brutal to the ecstatic, is both a love story and an indictment of what it means to be American. So I'm very thrilled to introduce Leah Lax. Thank you so much for being here. I'm always happy to see you. And I'm happy even now that I get to promote something that you've written. So thank you for being here.
Well, oh my God, I love this podcast. I was so excited when you asked me. So yay, we're here.
Okay, so my first question is, the whole inception story of how this book came about is pretty amazing. So I would love for you to tell us how it began. How was there ever a moment when you felt so overwhelmed or you didn't know what shape it was going to take? All the juicy details.
Well, first, I'm going to tell you the stuff that was going on that I didn't know was going on at the time.
Okay.
One of the first thing I did in public ever as a writer was I teamed up with a photographer, and she did a series of. She was a good portrait photographer, and I would interview the subject and get them to tell me their life story while she took pictures, and she was wonderful at capturing a full range of emotion. I mean, this is a it was about the Jewish ritual of mikvah, which is always a secret, and we got women to talk. This was from very secular to new converts to the most Orthodox. We got women to talk. This exhibit went all over the world, and that's where I kind of honed my interview technique. I didn't know that it was going to inform my entire career at the time. Okay, that's backdrop, and now comes the part I didn't know what was going on at the time. I was not 2 years out of the Hasidic world, so think remember that awful series, Kami Schmidt?
Yeah.
Right. I was like that, new in society, ridiculously innocent, kind of an immigrant in my own society, left-footed. I used to binge watch classic movies at night trying to catch up, but I was never going to catch up. It was like that. I was like the stranger that never went home. And
Wow.
I had decided to write that memoir you talked about, Uncovered. And I got a little grant enough that I could write full-time for a month. So I could not teach and just haul up and write. I was excited. In the background, though, Houston Grand Opera had a new director from another country named Anthony Freud, today the director of Chicago Lyric. And he got here and went, what is this place? Because Houston is the most ethnically diverse city in North America and a major, major magnet from all over the world for immigration. Every one of the organizations that have government sponsorship to identify immigrants and refugee cities that are refugee camps that are the most needy and of getting out of there, and the most qualified in many ways. They bring them here, they resettle them. Houston is one of the top resettlement cities, and all those organizations have big offices in this city. Besides which, it's oil capital, international corporation. I mean, there's so many reasons that draw people to Houston, right? So what Anthony saw was just an incredibly diverse environment, and he'd moved here from the UK. Big change. He got this idea and he wanted to bring opera to the people and get it out of the highbrow blue hair world. He got this idea to commission a new work. Do you want to get that?
No, it's not. I don't know what it is. It's nothing. Just go on.
It's a new work based on the stories of refugees in Houston. Okay, that was all they had. An idea, no shape, no requirements, no idea how to do it. That's it. And he went to a friend of mine who ran a little literature. Sorry, a little literature sort of organization called Imprint, which today is very major in Houston. And I taught community seminars for them. And I didn't know this was going on. Anthony asked Rich, the director, he said, I think we better get a writer who lives in Houston because this might take some time. And, I think he was worried about having to support somebody from out of town.
Okay.
And Rich had exactly one name for him. He said, I know who can do this, and I think she can do a good job. And he gave him the exhibit catalog from that little exhibit.
Wow.
I did not know any of this was happening. I want to add, I knew nothing about opera. I'm writing away, happy like a bug. I think I'd been writing for a week at that point. And I get a call from the assistant director of Houston Grand Opera saying, we want to talk to you about writing a new work. I was absolutely certain it was a prank call. I was like, who is this?
That's incredible.
After pacing and gesticulating in front of a friend for early morning coffee, that I yanked it and said, no, you will meet me before work. He convinced me that I had to at least talk to them. So I went downtown to tell Anthony Freud that they were making a huge mistake. I'd never written a libretto and didn't know anything about opera. He didn't back down. So I said, okay, I think I know the first step because talking to him, I thought of my immigrant grandparents and all that I don't know. And I thought of all those people I had interviewed and what it revealed. I said, I'm going to go listen to people and then I'll figure it out. And that's how this book started. The next year of my life, a year of getting acclimated into being in a new America that, I was like a Rip Van Winkle too, like I'd been out of it for 30 years, right? And,
Mhm.
step, not completely cut off, but in a different culture. I just went and listened to people. I did. Anna Devere Smith was my hero. I'd meet people on the street. I'd talk to people in, I don't know, a nail salon, anywhere, restaurants, anywhere. And then I did a lot of networking from there. And I just met people at random all over this enormous, enormous city. And when they agreed to sit down with me, I brought a tape recorder because I thought of their very varying accents like music, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I wanted to hear. I didn't know how to capture that, but I wanted to hear it. And I just started every single person. I said, "Will you please start with I was born?" Well, I was asking for 10 times, 100 times more stuff than I needed to write an opera. An opera is all, ahs and ohs and not a lot
Right.
of words, right? I am
Right.
at and I would it was I finally acknowledged to myself that this was some weird compulsion because I amassed over 1,000 pages of transcripts.
How did
But
you select what stories you were going to use? I mean, there's stories about upheaval and love and loss and arrival. How did you choose?
some of those interviews were short, they're on the phone, and some were in person, but it didn't matter which one. Every now and then I'd stumble out of one with some line or something that said that just leapt at me. It was like, "Nobody talks like this," or "You can't make this up," or "God, that just went straight to my gut," and I would scribble it down. And then I started writing. I started sometimes filling in what I knew they were trying to say, a little bit, and I started writing these little sort of poetic pieces. They were little, prose poems, but no, they were more than that. They were poems,
Mhm.
representing those people. And at first, I just collected, about 125 pages of those little poems. And I started circulating them like to the artistic director, the conductor, the chorus director, and they loved them. And then I knew I could build this oratorio from there. The Refuge doesn't tell one story. The opera was called The Refuge. It doesn't tell one story. It gives an overview, a collection of voices, like it reflects the city. It was hugely successful, like big splash in the New York Times, on dozens of newspapers that were actually active back then, um, and a national broadcast on NPR. And then it was over. But the stories I'd been entrusted with, and they sat on my hard drive, and I felt like I was carrying them. I think at some level I knew from the beginning of that project that I would write a book.
And you did, and it's an extraordinary book. Now, the book has 7 stories. How
Mhm.
did you choose those 7?
Um, I can't even answer that question.
Okay.
The ones that, went straight to inside me in a way that, above and beyond even the others. I mean, there were several that I cut at the very last minute that I felt absolutely the same about, just so that the book would have the kind of arc and balance that you look for and the size that you look for. Um, but these were the standouts. And then I sat back and I looked at them and I said, wait a minute, they give this incredible overview of America. They came here for different reasons, all kinds of things. It gave you a spread, and I began to understand in the course of the writing that somehow when we collect these stories and listen to them without dividing by country or calling them an other or marginalizing them, when we say, let's just shut up and listen to New American, you get a portrait of our country that's fresh and new, and it's telling what it is today. it was
Right.
incredible.
Right. Absolutely incredible. Now, you said that a lot of people wanted their stories told in confidence. What do you think that was? And did they change their minds when you finished the story?
What I did is I took a legal release form with me.
Okay.
And I told everybody, "Don't worry, this will be in confidence," and we both signed it. You can't legally promise anybody true
Right.
anonymity, but you can make yourself legally bound never to disclose key identifying information. And I did change
Okay.
all their names in the book because it really wouldn't be safe for them if I didn't.
Okay. So you yourself were born an immigrant, but your family never told you the stories. You said that your grandparents' experiences in coming to the United States were intentionally buried in favor of the American dream. That stopped me when I read that. I just thought they thought that they could not have those two experiences together. Why? Why couldn't they live side by side?
This was true, what you just said, of virtually everybody that I interviewed, no
Wow.
matter where they were from. And by hearing that sentiment over and over and over in the context of their story, that's how I came to understand that it's very common that when people come to this country, they have um, they have things that they really don't want to look back at, but even more so, they have. How do I put this? It doesn't matter why someone comes here. They could come because they have a
Right.
corporate job that's going to pay them $200,000 a year. It doesn't matter. They're leaving their culture. They're leaving their their web of belonging and their networking and a thousand things. Often they're leaving their language. I mean, there is such their home, family, friends. There is such loss involved in this kind of migration. Um, and everybody wants the next generation of their family to feel like they are from here because it doesn't feel good to not feel like you're from here. And so some of that loss they start to look at as a sacrifice for the sake of their children. So they don't emphasize where they came from. They might take the kids back to meet, if they can. A lot of people can't ever go back. But they don't emphasize it and they gloss it over. Any part that's tough or bad, they gloss over or hide. I had many, many people say, "I have never told anyone this story." And particularly the men hit it. And it was the men who tended to cry.
That's incredible.
So then I began to understand my grandparents because they were like quintessential Americans. They wanted us to be almost stereotypically Americans. They pushed us hard. Even the grandchildren. I'm the second generation born in this country, but we were all together like one big family.
You said that the more, well, this is sort of coming off from what you just said. You wrote that the more you interviewed people, the more you discovered the story of your own Jewish family. So, two
Mhm.
questions. First, had you set out, was that part of your plan to discover that, or did it just sort of happen? And I would love to know how you discovered what you discovered. Was it just in thinking about it, or did somebody say something that made you think? Or
Well, during the phase where I was doing the interviewing and getting ready to write an opera, I was just noticing the overlap like crazy with Jewish culture. I mean, people said things like, "You have to understand, in our culture, families are way too close and everybody interrupts each other all the time." It made me laugh, right? Or in our
that's
culture,
Jewish.
books and education are very, very important to us. They're
That's my family.
right. I
Yeah.
began to understand this as an immigrant phenomenon. And Jews, unfortunately, have been immigrants over and over and over. It has deeply stamped our culture. If you look up a list of Jewish expulsions from towns and countries, it goes on for pages and pages and pages into the modern era. After 1947, Jews were expelled from most of the ancient Jewish communities, from most of the North African countries. Um, so we're immigrants. We've been forced into that, but it's really true of all immigrants. I didn't do the research at that point. Later, when I went to write the book, and needed to flesh this out. I'd come across things that made me put down my, close my computer or open a browser and start doing research because I didn't. This is sad. I realized that most Jewish families in this country, and 50% of the Jews in the world, live in this country today because of these expulsions. That wasn't true when I was growing up. There were ancient communities all over the world, but there are not very few of them now. And the U.S. opened its doors. We were just a big wave of immigrants, and we weren't the only ones coming in during those years. Lots of people were coming in. But I realized that most of the Jewish people that I knew, it was pretty typical what I'd experienced, and that was the following. I didn't know my grandmother's maiden name. I didn't know the names of all the siblings of my own grandparents, people who I knew. I did not know the names of the towns they were from. I didn't know what countries they were from. I didn't understand that this was incredibly basic information that isn't, that isn't true of everybody.
Right.
So in the writing of the book, a lot of this was sparked, and I would stop. I even hired a Jewish genealogist and found my family's migratory roots. I found cousins in Sweden. I mean, close relatives. I found graves of my family in places I never imagined, in Oslo, in Scotland, in Nova Scotia. This was a migratory route where little kids would die, and I uncovered a story. Yeah, I began to understand.
It's incredible. We have an audience question for you. This is from Robin Stull. Have you kept in touch with any of the people you interviewed?
You bet I have. And although their names are changed, they're probably going to be at the book launch next week. And I will be just throwing my arms around everybody. And it's been wonderful, particularly the people that were young people or kids when I met them. It's a few years have passed, and it's been wonderful to see how they've grown and to see how their life has grown here. Yeah. But that I wasn't able to with everybody, because I interviewed a number of people who were undocumented, and they literally had to disappear afterwards.
Oh, I also wanted to ask you, what does it take to not be the other in America? Do you have any ideas like how we can find a cultural balance? And also, the second part of the question is, you wrote that as a Jewish American gay person, you somehow feel more American now. So the two things seem at war with each other. So explain to me, how can they be both?
I think my answer to that answers both at the same time.
Okay.
The media and also identity politics wants to label everybody. And in terms of identity politics, there's a good side to that, because it's a push for acknowledgement and acceptance. But there's a flip side, and the flip side is it puts people in boxes.
Right.
And those boxes are almost always labels for minorities. Like, we have to be nice to them. There's no we and them. And lots of us have many labels. I call it dancing on the hyphen. But we're not one thing. We're often not even of one ethnicity. But even when we are, as Americans, we're hyphenated Americans. We have many identities, and they evolve. If we ignore those labels just for a moment and look at New Americans as one large mass, and we understand then that virtually everybody in the United States is descended from people that were members of that stream, because
That's right.
the great American experiment has been bringing people from all over the world since its inception. It's not an accident. This has driven our economy. This has been a huge factor in why the U.S. is probably the most economically successful country in the world. If we look at it that way, if we look at the aggregate of immigrants and their descendants, we are the majority
Right.
Immigrants and the descendants define America. So my answer is, my stump is to change our viewpoint and to understand that this is what it is to be American. This is a nation of immigrants. Does that help?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about what's going on in America today, especially with considering the shameful way we treat immigrants, and also of late, before we got on here, you told me a shocking story about prejudice against Jews. I wonder if you wouldn't mind talking about that here.
This identity politics is used like a tool often for a negative tool, often for cyberbullying and clickbait. And the sad part is that for every corporation, a click equals money.
Mhm.
Every corporation manages to get vital paying ads based on numbers of clicks. So they want them. This probably is at the base of why the big four like X, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook are so complacent about their policing. They'll take care of the most intense things eventually, but they're slow, and they often can't be reached. It's money. That's so all over the country since October 7th. A lot of companies, a lot of sites, a lot of places, a lot of bookstores have been afraid to bring on Jewish authors or books with any kind of Jewish content because of the potential of either demonstrations or cyberbullying that will have a negative impact on. They could lose followers, they could lose subscribers, etc., who just don't want to deal with it. Either they're part of the cyberbullying or they don't want to see it. They want to be part of it. And Jewish authors have been basically canceled a great deal. The Jewish Book Council has opened a new division to address anti-Semitism in publishing because they say it's unprecedented. I've had a couple of 3 essays accepted now and refused post October 7th, and numerous places that were really enthusiastic asked for review materials who won't even respond, have ghosted us. I can't prove this is the reason because if asked, they respond with a euphemism. The Daily Beast, for example, said, "Oh, we've changed our rules."
What rules?
Well, when my publicist went to the boss of the editor that accepted my essay with great enthusiasm, the boss said, "Well, that editor can only take, now we're very strict about it. That editor can only take things of political content. Can you tell me what's not political about immigration?"
I was going to say that.
But when an excuse is thrown up, you can't argue with the excuse because they'll
No.
just another one because that's not the real reason. Or is it? You never quite know. That's the status of this book now that came out during this time. And so you're not gonna see a lot of reviews in print. And but except in my own city, which has been amazing. I
And
mean,
also,
amazing.
I want to tell everybody out there who's listening to please buy and read the book, and please write a review on it. Write it on Goodreads, write it on Amazon, even though you're going to buy your book at an indie bookstore. Buy it, review it anywhere. Tell your friends, put it on your social media. It's the most important way you can get to, to have books find their audience and get the attention they deserve. So I want to also ask you, because another thing that you wrote, where you wrote that sexuality and spirituality are entwined. I love that. Tell us about that. Tell us why you think that.
Well, I think part of it is based in very ancient Jewish philosophy, and part of it is just my personal conviction. But I came to that conclusion that it is the source, it is deemed the source has been since ancient times of everything that we do that's creative. In the
Right.
Talmud, it says, if it weren't for that urge, they call it, if it weren't for that urge, a man would never plant a vineyard or build a house. I love that quote so
That's a wonderful quote. I love that too. I love that too. We have an
and
audience. Go ahead.
it's about creativity and it's about civilization. So I see the creative urge and our sexuality is deeply intertwined. I know that, and I'm not the only one. I couldn't come to terms with myself as an artist or emerge as an artist until I came to terms with my own sexuality. It was the two happened, and then in the process of really acknowledging that I'm a lesbian and coming to a point of great joy over that. Um, my faith and the whole nature of my faith changed, and I grieved it. I didn't want to stop being Hasidic at that point. I had a structure and a comfort and,
Community.
everything, but I couldn't anymore. I began to believe in myself, and if this God didn't believe in me, I knew I was right, and I had to leave.
That's so moving. And again, I want to mention your book, Uncovered, which everybody should read. It's so powerful. It's really one of my favorite books. We have another audience question. Oh, we did. Where is it? Oh, here it is. They disappear. What are you working on now?
Okay. When I started Not From Here, the Song of America, I wrote the first line, which is, this book began with an opera. And I thought, oh my God, I will never sell this book to any publisher. Nobody will ever pick it up. And the libretto for the opera is actually at the back of the book. So you can kind of imagine it, the words sung, but they tell their story, and you can see how it really is just a play that unfolds. But I do love working with music very much. I just had a premiere with composer Mark Buller, who I bonded with because we're both refugees from extreme religion. So I sat him down and I interviewed him. I said, Mark, you're a little bit too buttoned up. I need to open you up. It's my job as a liberal to cry. Now start with I was born. And he told me about his childhood in a deeply fundamentalist Baptist environment. And I said, he suffered from insomnia. I said, why? Because if I might die in my sleep.
Oh my gosh. That's right. That's that prayer.
It was horrific for him. And like me, he went to university while still a religious person, and his evolution as an artist made him come to terms with his faith. And because to be creative, you have to be spontaneous, right? What if people are telling you what to think? And so your faith changes.
Right. That's right.
And I wanted to go there. We wrote a mass, a Jewish girl and a Protestant boy.
I love that.
It was premiered in a Baptist church by Houston Chamber Choir, which won a Grammy 2 years ago. They're a wonderful choir and a 10-piece orchestra. And it embeds his story and my story. The section that's called Gloria, that's supposed to be a celebration of the glories of God, is a celebration of love, because we both felt that we could only come to really spontaneous love when we could allow ourselves to be spontaneous. That is, leaving religion and coming to terms with ourselves as artists was why we both have long-term marriages to very, very wonderful women to whom we're very devoted to. So that section is a celebration of love. Okay. We're working on the organization that premiered it. It was incredibly successful and everybody was crying. I love to make people cry. I used to have a doctor named Dr. Payne, and I used to ask him the same thing. We're working on raising the funds to do a professional to reperform and do a professional recording so we can get it out there. We really believe, the organization believes, that we can take this across the country. That's one thing. also the last chapter in Not From Here. So buy the book, Not From Here, The Song of America, on Amazon, and stick with it to the last chapter, which will blow you away. It changed my life meeting that family. I hope it will change yours. It changed my whole understanding of corporate America and eco refugees and what that means and where we live today and how precarious we are, everything. They were such a vibrant, funny, loving family, and they were all interrupting each other and stuff. But it didn't. It wasn't enough to put it in the book. So I approached a theater in town, spoke to the artistic director, and we just had a reading with actors. I'm developing it into a play. So those are my two projects right now.
Is there anything you can't do? I just feel
really
like whatever you do, it's like a golden
because I've been trying to get back to it for years.
Well, I want to say, first, I want to thank everybody for being here. Please go and buy Leah Lax's books. I'm telling you, they're wonderful. They'll make you cry, but in the best possible way. It's like a cleansing cry.
Oh, they make you laugh too. They will.
They do. They make you laugh. They're just amazing. There's some books that I just keep and I don't give away, and these are two of them. I also want to tell everybody to please sign up for the Mighty Blazes newsletter at amightyblaze.com. You can, this particular interview is going to live forever on our YouTube station, so you can watch it again. You can tell your friends. And I also want to really thank you for being here, Leah. This was it's always wonderful to see your face. It's always wonderful to talk to you. And I just loved Not From Here. And I want everybody else to love it too, so we can talk about it.
Thank you. I have one regret, and that's that I did all the talking when my book is all about listening. Read it to read some of the most powerful, earth-shattering, life-changing stories I think you'll ever read, with the exception of Caroline Leavitt's novel.
Which wouldn't be a novel without Leah Lax. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. Leah, just stay on for a second. And goodbye, everybody.